Welcome to the Sportlight podcast for parents, coaches, and athletes. The Sportlight refers to the time in an athlete's life when they have increased ability to affect the culture around them and the increased opportunity to learn life's lessons through sports. This podcast aims to help parents and coaches capitalize on their athletes' precious time in the Sportlight. The Sportlight podcast is brought to you by Especially for Athletes program.
Welcome everyone to the Sportlight podcast. So excited you could join us today. And those of you who are joining us on YouTube, welcome. We hope you'll subscribe to the YouTube channel and to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to this with. I'm here with Dustin and Cameron, partners of this, and grateful to have you guys with us. Today we're going to be discussing a conversation I had with Dustin Smith. And some listening to this may not know who Dustin Smith is, the mental performance coach for the Tampa Bay Rays, and took them to the World Series last year as a team. And he's worked with NFL players. The Navy SEALs have contracted him to help out. And the guy is just a really, really cool guy, has a lot of great ideas about performance and how to enhance that performance. And so I just wanted to jump right in and listen to something that he said that I think is aimed both at athletes and parents, but that I think is just a really, I walked away from this conversation thinking, I'm glad I had that conversation. So Let's go ahead and just listen to some of what he said. And then I would love to hear your guys' take on some of the principles that he teaches.
Another subtle little strategy tip for everybody. Praise. How we praise can shift a child to the growth mindset or to the fixed mindset. So let's say a kid gets an A. And he gets an A on a test, comes home to school or goes and tells his friend, you got an A, and there's one way to do it. You got an A because you're smart. You got an A because you're just like mommy. You're just like daddy. You're good at math. That's why you got an A. Unbeknownst to the parents, you literally just hurt your child's future success when adversity strikes. Unbeknownst. And you might be thinking, wait a minute, how did I do that? Here's what it looks like in sports. They hit a home run, they play a game. Oh, you did good because you're a beast. You did good because you're an amazing basketball player. That's why you did good. You won the tournament because you're fast. You're fat. That's why you did good. Unbeknownst to the parents or the coach, you're shifting the player, the athlete, or son or daughter into the fixed mindset. You're hurting them for the future adversity, because here's what's happening. Here's what's going to happen. If the next test they struggle and they're not as smart, or if they lose the next game, they're going to attribute it to, well, I guess I'm not smart, or I guess I'm not fast, well, I guess I'm not a beast anymore. And all of a sudden their effort level is going to drop, because why try when all of a sudden I'm not as good as I was anymore? A better way to give praise is to ask them, is to praise the controllable. So it looks like this. If they get an A, it's, you know why you got an A? It's because you study so hard for it. It's because you did your homework on time and you took notes in class, and that's why you got an A. You're praising the process and not the results. The reason you did good in that game is because in the backyard you're always working on your left-hand dribble. You remember how you did that? Or hey, the hours that you spent practicing, that's why you did good. You know why you're fast? You're paying close attention to your nutrition. You're doing those plyometrics and speed drills before you go to school every day. That's why you're successful. So you're praising the process as opposed to praising the result. And so there's a simple little strategy. That's out of Stanford. Carol Dweck is the leading researcher on praise, and something simple for parents.
Yeah, so simple concept there, praising the process instead of the outcome. And, that's not an idea that's necessarily unique to Dustin Smith, but I love some of the ways that he taught that. And I would just love to know, what are you guys' thoughts on some of the things he shared?
Well, I have something, the first thing that caught my mind when he was talking about process, and I was thinking of parents, is that, the result is what's Facebook worthy or Instagram worthy or post worthy, right? We live in a world where we constantly want to show the result of something and then be, praised or complimented or whatever for the result. The process doesn't get put on Facebook. no one sees the effort that goes behind it. And usually only the positive result is what's broadcast to the world through social media, which is sad, but it's sort of the world that we live in. And so, I fear that some of these kids see that and feel that way, that, they go through all this effort and all this time and all this work, and the difference on whether or not they get complimented or not sometimes is whether or not the ball went in the hoop or not, even though sometimes it just doesn't go in. And you put all the time and effort into it, it just didn't go in that day. And the result is you don't get on your mom's or dad's Facebook page that night with a big long story about how proud they are of you, right? When we should be proud of our kids, whether the ball went in or not. The process that they went to get to the point of taking that shot was the same. They worked really hard. They learned a lot of lessons. They failed, they got up, they kept trying, they failed again, and they just happened to maybe make or miss the shot when it counted. We should be proud of the fact that they took the shot, right? And that they got to that point where they had that confidence to take the shot. And whether it went in or not, I hate the fact that some of these kids, we have kids that are graduating high school or not making the high school team or whatever it is. And when that light turns off and those social media posts stop coming from mom and dad and uncle and aunt and neighbors and things, some of them go to a dark place. That was their identity, and really the process is where the lessons are learned. That's where the value is. It's not so much the result.
Yeah. As I was listening to him, I thought we need to praise process instead of podiums, like the kids up there. We need to do attributes instead of accomplishments. That stuff, because you could keep talking about that stuff as it goes on. And it's Uncle Rico. I love the Uncle Ricos in the world, but Uncle Ricos look back at all their accomplishments, right? Like they're the guys that are hung up on those accomplishments, but the successful people, they rely on the attributes, not the accomplishments, to give them purpose in life, and they fall back on that. And so that rang true to me.
Well, and for the Uncle Ricos of the world, you're sitting there wondering, well, did you accomplish nothing in the 15 years since? Like that's your only accomplishment in life? Have you done nothing productive in the next 15, 20? Like that's what it tells me when you're still sitting there living the glory days. You're like, man, I don't know about you, but I'm like a fat dad with a bunch of kids and a normal job. And these are the glory days for me. I'm loving it.
Yeah. But part of that's our fault as parents, don't you think? Because especially now, I mean, it's hard for parents, I think, and we're parents, so we get it, but we're in it. So I think we can all understand this, but for parents that are listening to this, it's a totally different world that we're in right now because of social media and because everybody has a camera on them. And we make these kids feel like rock stars when they're 14 and 15, because we can throw it up on the internet and literally thousands of people are seeing it and commenting on it and liking it. And the kids are seeing that. And so I think to some of them that it does become the pinnacle, right? Because
I worked on a forecasting report today at work and nobody has commented on it or liked it yet. Nobody.
Right? Exactly.
Like literally just me. Just like my boss didn't come in and like post it on the website.
Your wife didn't take a picture of you.
Yeah, nobody. I just didn't get a single like.
Yeah. Yeah. So when those likes turn off, right, or when that attention stops, unfortunately, we have these kids who their identity is the sport that they play. I'm a football player. I'm a cheerleader. And that's a discussion for probably another day about how we have to be careful with that and what goes on with these kids' confidence and self-esteem. Sometimes when that was it, their identity was, they were a high school athlete, and then that we call it the Sportlight, right? When that Sportlight turns off, they don't know really what they are. But I've never thought of it that way till listening to Justin Sua explain it in the fashion of, why you were successful and making sure that our kids understand the reason you were successful was, and what the focus should be is the time you put in, the time when no one was watching, the early mornings, the failures, the successes, and reminding them of that, because they can draw on that when they are a dad sitting in an office doing work like you were doing today, Cam.
Well, what Justin's trying to teach everyone is some resiliency. He's trying to teach them resolve.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. The fixed mindset is I'm either good at math or I'm not. I'm either fast or I'm not. The growth mindset is this is a continuum that can change throughout my entire life if I'm willing to work. And in the spirit of good, better, best, as parents, they're doing a good job by praising them and telling them they're smart or fast. But the better version or the best version is to teach them and tell them why they accomplished that because of the process, because of the work. Their story's not written yet. You're not fully baked in terms of what you'll be good at and what you'll be bad at now for time and all eternity. That's just not how it works.
Yeah.
As you say that, I think good is praising your kids at any level, which is awesome. Better is praising the right things. Maybe best is helping them see how those things translate moving forward, to help them see that these things they're developing in sports and in other venues of their life, that the attributes they're developing, that's what's going to translate to being a good parent, a good spouse, a good employee, all these things that matter way more than any time spent in a high school or college sport or whatever. Those attributes translate. So maybe best is saying not only, hey, way to work hard, but you're going to have times in your life where you need to work hard, get up early, do these things when you don't want to. The same thing that made you successful right now, that is what's going to make you successful when you're older, when you're done with sports.
Well, and Shad, you may remember in the first book that we wrote especially for athletes, we had a section in there where we talked about focusing on becoming your best versus the best, and the danger in the focus being the best, because there's only one that's the best, right? And not that you don't have that goal that you want. Of course, you'd like to be the very best, but there's only one of those. And I think, when we put this emphasis on the result, what we do is we tell our kids sometimes that, hey, if you're not a champion, you're a loser, right? If you didn't get a scholarship, you failed.
Ain't first or last.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And the kid might have made it maximize their talent, right? We maximize our talent, and sometimes that's just not good enough to make the team, or it's not good enough to start, or it's not good enough to be an all-stater, or it's not good enough to go on and play in college, or it's not good enough to go play professionally, or it's not good enough to make the Hall of Fame. At some point, you stop. And if the only focus and the only way that we're going to, praise and compliment and recognize our kids, whether we're a coach or it's our own children, is if they are the winner. And the way that we praise them is you're the champion, rather than focusing on the process and all the work that they did to get there, and let them know how proud we are of their resiliency and their resolve and their focus and dedication to it. We run the risk of this whole thing at the end of it being really a lose game for them.
And if you're focused on being the best, there's also, many of our athletes that follow the Especially for Athletes program, some of them are super elite. And if your aim is to be the best, we talked to one sports psychologist, Dustin, you'll remember, that said that actually places a ceiling on the kids, right? Yeah. Because if being the best comes easily to them, then all of a sudden they're not putting in that early morning work. They've met their goal. Yeah. And so it actually,
I'm at the top of the mountain.
What's that?
I'm literally at the top of the mountain.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm not going to go anymore. And so it actually, some of these elite high school kids never become as elite as they could be, because their goal was to be the best, not best.
Or the best at their high school. I wanted to be the best on my team. Well, congratulations, you did it. You're the best on your team, but you could have been the best in the whole state. You could have been the best maybe in the whole country if you'd have done a little bit extra work. But what is the best? It's letting our kids know the best is whatever, the very best that you can become, and be proud of that and be happy with that. And if that ends up being that you're LeBron James, awesome. But if it ends up being, son, that your very best got you this far and that was it, and you're back up on a team and you don't play much, I'm proud of the fact that you worked your tail off and you've learned those lessons that are going to make you really good someday as a father and in work and as a husband and things that really matter because of this experience you went through in sports, whether you were the champion or you're on the podium at the end or not.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes, and this is actually, I stole this from my son. It's one of his favorite quotes is Kobe Bryant, who's accomplished a fair amount in his life, was asked, how do you want to be remembered? And he said, I hope people will think of me as an overachiever. And I was like blown away that was what his desire was, which basically alludes to the fact that I maximized all of the ability I was given because I worked my tail off and I overachieved for the raw gifts and talents I was given. And he was given some freakish talents and gifts. And his goal was to still just overachieve. And
he did. The stories of Kobe Bryant going into gyms after games and or making 1,000 shots a day during the summer, making them, not shooting, making the stories of him making 1,000 shots a day in the summer, going into gyms after games, NBA games. These are stories that are told of him after he had won NBA championships, after he'd made tens of millions of dollars, after he'd been an MVP and all these things, right? All-star and all these things. Not beforehand when he was still hungry to get there. He'd already gotten to the top. He was already considered to be one of the greatest to ever play. And yet in his mind, he was upset because he missed a last-second jumper and he had to go back in the gym and fix it, right? Because his mindset was, I should make all my shots. I believe I'm that good. So he'd go back out and shoot some more because he already been told he was the best. People told him he's the best all the time, but he believed he could be better. That's the difference in the best versus your best. And he understood that it's the process that was going to get him there, not just,
raw talent. Yeah. I love that concept of if every athlete worked to be an overachiever, that would take that fixed mindset out, right?
Yep.
And Cam, you have shared with us a story about your son, and that came to mind as we're having this conversation. Would you mind taking a second, just sharing that story with us? I think it'd be awesome to hear it.
Yeah, if you'll humor me for a minute. And I had to get his permission to tell this story because he's a little embarrassed about it. I thought it was pretty neat and something I think a lot of kids could benefit from. So I've got a son who's just getting ready to graduate high school, and he started playing football because his dad thought it was a good idea for him in about 5th grade. And he was not the best athlete in the world at the time and really nervous, timid, kind of nice kid. And naturally, he was put on the B team as he should have been. And he was just kind of excited to play tackle football and kind of scared and nervous. And about 4 games into the season, we were playing the best team in the league. And we were getting hammered, just hammered. And he was running out there every once in a while for a kickoff or kickoff return. And some of you may not know here, at least within the state of Utah, there's a rule that, every kid though has to at least play 10 plays. Every kid at least is playing something somewhat. And so they got hammered by like 30 points. They were bigger, stronger, faster. And we get in the car and my 5th son starts to cry. And I'm like, okay, I get it. It was a physical game and it's probably scary. And I said, hey, you guys did great. They were a good team. They were big and strong and, that's okay. Sometimes you just lose. And he looked at me. He's like, Dad, you don't get it. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I'm a 10-play kid. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm a 10-play kid. I played 10 plays. I am officially a 10-play kid. I'm the worst kid on the worst team. And that was he hit rock bottom. He had been tracking in his head and realized that the coaches didn't play him a single play more than absolutely necessary. And he's just crying. So I just say, hey, let's go get something to eat. I don't know that's what good dads do, right? When their sons are crying, let's go get ice cream or something to eat. And so we went and sat down and went and got some food and we're sitting there talking and he's still trying to wipe his tears away. And I just said, well, let's tell you what, like tonight, let's email the coach and we're not going to ask him that you tell him you should play more. We're going to just ask him what you can work on. And we're going to set some goals and we're going to work really hard to do whatever your coach tells you to do. And then you're going to have to earn that playing time. and let's try to be, work our way out of being a 10 play kid, but you're going to have to just earn it during practice. And so we wrote down some goals on the napkin and things like that. And anyway, fast forward to the rest of the season, he started to get a little bit more time and a little more confidence. And the next year he was on a B team again. But he was kind of a solid contributor. And then in 7th grade, he was one of the better players on the B team. And then in 8th grade, he made the A team, and he was still shell shocked and a little nervous, and everyone was big, strong, and fast, but he just kept grinding and ended up on the 9th grade team, being one of the key players on a championship team. And then his sophomore year, he just kept grinding. And he had some friends that were starting to get pulled up, and he wasn't yet. And he just kept working. But he was the MVP on the sophomore team, on the defense. And then the JV team, some guys were playing varsity all the time, and he was only playing a little, but he just kept grinding and working. And I just said, look, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And all of a sudden, fast forward to his senior year, and he was the starting outside linebacker for one of the top teams in the state of Utah. And it was after one of the games, we were sitting there talking, by the fence, and I looked down, and he's got mom written on his wrist, and he's got all these numbers. And I said, and I recognized some of the numbers, right? And I was like, what's that number? Why do you have 10 on your wrist? And he kind of got a little embarrassed, and he said, oh, that one's for me. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, that's a reminder that I was a 10 play kid. And I write that on every game on my wrist to remind me of that moment that I realized I was a 10 play kid, and that I decided I would never be a 10 play kid again, and that I was going to start varsity one day, and I write that as a reminder of what hard work can do. And as a dad, you're just like, wow, like I was blown away, right? Just trying not to cry and not cool and tough. Yeah. But I just sat there realizing this kid gets it. Like, he's been grinding for 7 years and accomplished one of the goals he wanted more than anything. And he had sincerely overachieved. He had just outworked kids to get that spot. There were kids that were bigger, stronger, and faster, but he had just worked and was smart and was a great teammate and did all the things that made a team better. Yeah. So that was a pretty cool story. And so when I saw this clip of Coach Sua, I thought, man, that there's real power in that growth mindset and that ability to just have resiliency.
Well, and I love it, Cam. And I know your son, so I know how I watched that process and watched him develop, but the thing about his growth is that even had he not been on such a good high school team his senior year that, won a lot of games and been the starter, I know because of the way you handled that situation. I mean, that car ride from that game to wherever you ate lunch at, and that meal was one of the most important 30, 40, 50 minutes of his entire life. Because what you didn't say is it's your coach's fault. You didn't make excuses. You didn't get mad at him and start chewing him out for not playing hard enough or not being good enough or blaming the refs or everybody for why he didn't do better. And you never brought up why don't you just quit then, right? It was let's make goals. What's the process going to be? Because you knew, or maybe you didn't know it then, I'm sure you recognize it now, that the next several years and what he did with that were going to be critical to his growth as a man, right? And the fact that he hung on, whether or not he started or not his senior year, he knew that he put in the time, gave it all he had, maxed out his ability. And he's not going to play in the NFL, right? But
unlikely.
But the process has made him into a man that, in his life, man, he's going to refer back to that 10 play story and the 10 play kid. And man, what an awesome experience. So kudos to you for how you handled it, brother.
Well, the conversation's easy. It's the 7 years of work that he put in after that was, I did the easy part. Plus I got free food, food out of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great story.
I was thinking as you were telling that, like, as we go through this and maybe just to close up this podcast today, I was listening to Justin, listening to you guys and thinking there's a message in this for parents, right? Have the right conversations. that's a takeaway from this. Like,
Yeah.
talk about process, talk about work, talk about those things. There's a message for even coaches. Sometimes coaches get caught up in the result, so they aren't focused on the process with their team and building young men and young women. There's a great message for players. Be an overachiever, no matter where you are. Even if you're at the top of the mountain, be an overachiever. And so I think of that, just that growth mindset, that performance and that process over podiums, those attributes over accomplishments. Just, we could focus on those individually, as parents, as coaches. And I think that will help us all be better in each of those avenues. And so grateful for your insights. Any closing words you guys have on this subject as you think about it?
I just love your kids, man. And the sports we're so lucky to have it. I think we've seen in the last year, especially with the pandemic and everything, how much we miss sports when we don't have it. And the fact, if we have a child that's able to be a part of a team, as parents, we shouldn't ruin it for them. And as kids, you should soak up every second that you have to be a part of a team. You'll miss being part of a team, I think, more than you'll miss the actual playing of the sport. And if us parents will stay out of their way and let the kids enjoy that and grow from the process, then man, what a lucky opportunity it is to play sports.
No question. Love it. Great talking to you
guys. And thanks for joining the Sportlight podcast. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel and to our podcast and all the platforms you're on, and look for future podcasts to come. We'll be doing them every week, and look forward to having you on. Thanks, guys.
This has been the Sportlight podcast from Especially for Athletes, sponsored by Coca-Cola. You can learn more about Especially for Athletes by visiting the website at especiallyforathletes.org. You can also learn more about the book, The Sportlight, by Shad Martin and Dustin Smith at especiallyforathletes.org/book.